welcome back. My name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury makeup. And today we are taking a look at one of the new BYREDO eyeshadow palettes. We are going to take a look at the one called Syren. And I actually have the other two, Sciomancer and Corporate, and I have a review up on those. I will leave the link down below, but we are going to talk about which is my favorite of the three at the end of this video. So if you're unfamiliar with the BYREDO eyeshadow palettes, this is what the actual palette exterior looks like. So you've got kind of like this, bumpy pebble-like finish and in this, fake gold. And then you've got black plastic on the bottom. Inside you have a mirror and then you have the shades here. So this is Syren. And this has a 12-month shelf life. This is a total weight of 6 grams and it's made in Italy. And I have to say that each of the three palettes, the formulas feel a little bit different. They all act a little bit differently in each of the palettes. So we'll discuss that at the end when we're comparing all three. Now, just briefly, I want to show you that the palette does come in a little canvas drawstring bag. And this palette is heavyweight. So, even though this exterior here is made out of plastic, it definitely is weighted. This top half here with the mirror is very heavy and it does have a little bit of a magnetic closure here. So very nice palette. The palette, again, I mentioned it comes in this bag and that bag is in this box. So it's one of these slide boxes and it has the ingredients for all of the shades written on the back as well. So let's take a look at the actual shades in here. All right, so let's take a look at the palette here. This gold shade here is called Victory. The fuchsia shade, I'm really not sure how to say it because it's cherry bit. I don't know, like it looks kind of like a Bibois at the end, B-O-I-S, but it's actually a D. And I just double checked my box and the back of the palette and it looks like B-D-I-S. So it's like Caribides, I don't know. Anyway, and then we move on to this vibrant green. And this is Scylla or Skyla. I'm not sure how to say that either. And then this light pink is called Melody. And the blue is Odyssey. All right, so let's swatch these. Now, one thing to note is these are basically about a finger's width. So you can kind of fit your finger directly in there. And this palette works best with your fingers. So here are the last two. So here are the swatches. And I have to say that the gold and the blue on the ends, it is a little bit harder to get your finger in here because this formula is it's kind of like a creamy consistency. So you really pick up more product by swiping and there's just not that much space to truly swipe. So when you're working with this, if you're using your fingers, you kind of have to keep going in smaller amounts. At least that's my experience here. So let's take a look at the actual formulas of these. This one here, as I mentioned, all of these are on the creamier side. The gold one here, Victory, is different from the other four. This one feels much softer when you touch it. It feels like kind of like a velvety, creamy finish. And it's soft, but it's not soft like a Natasha Denona where you touch it and it makes like a huge indent. It's just kind of like this silky, velvety texture to it. Whereas these other ones are a bit firmer and they almost have like a cream-like texture. And you can kind of see where I run my fingers over it. You can see how the texture has kind of changed. You get more of that like shiny, smooth look where I have touched it. So you can see overall that the shades look pretty vibrant when swatched. But one thing I would like to note is when you are using these, again, application with your finger is going to be best to get the vibrant pigmented shades. But with these shades, you really need to have enough lid space to kind of pat out the green and the light pink here. Because when you just go in a small area, it's hard to actually get that color to show up as vibrantly. So you kind of need to like do like a little pat swipe type motion And for example, if you're trying to get just in the inner corner, it's really difficult to get just a small amount there. You really kind of need to work in a larger space if you're like me. Now, perhaps a foam tip applicator would be better. I don't have one small enough that would, make a huge difference there, but let's test out, a regular one that comes with an eyeshadow palette and see how that does. So let me bring you in closer. We'll try that right now on the inner corner. So we're going to try to add just a little bit more of the bright green, and this is just a foam tip applicator from the Guerlain Holiday palette. And let's just see how that does. So it definitely picks up the product well. And by the way, this palette does not come with any applicators. But yes, I think if you're gonna go in a small area, you need to use something like this. All right, so the foam tip applicator is going to work just as well as fingers if you prefer to use them. Just note that the palette does not come with any applicators. I created 3 looks with this palette to show you the versatility of this and kind of how subdued you can go, as well as something more vibrant like this. And obviously you could increase the intensity of these shades. I kept mine a little bit softer, but they are loud shades for me. So for me, this is a bright look, but you can definitely increase the intensity to something as vibrant as this fuchsia shade here as well. So let's take a look at the 3 looks, and then I am going to go over my thoughts on this formula, and we'll talk about how it compares to the other BYREDO shadows. Starting off with the Rapper 15 in this light pink shade. And let's see how this goes on. Okay, so it seems to be too creamy, really, to pick up like this. Let's try it with a finger. Or maybe it's really light. Okay, this is like not what I was thinking. Definitely a little bit lighter than I thought. Let me see if I do get any on the brush here. Okay, so I'm brushing kind of what's already on there into the crease, buffing it up. You can see you got this like pink sparkle, and the like glitter particles are a brighter pink. So let me see just what comes up just with the brush. You can see how it's making like divots sort of in the shadow. It's like, I'm not sure if you can see the texture on there, but it's like turning into a cream, but there are spots that are being picked up more. So just with the brush, I'm getting primarily just a little bit of sparkle, but not really any of the pink shade. So let's try this. Let's add a little bit more here. All right, let's go into the blue. This is the Rephr 02. We're gonna try this one. And this one you can see is coming up more easily on the brush. And it still has that creamy texture to it, but it's a little bit more powdery. You can see I actually have like a little kick up there. So I'm patting this on. Let's see. You can see where it goes over the pink, it turns into a little bit more purple, even where you don't really see the pink pigment. Okay, I'm just going to use my finger on this and add a little bit here. So payoff wise, it looks like I'm getting about the same amount with my finger or with the Rephr 02. The Rephr 02, keep in mind, is a little bit firmer. It's a shorter bristle brush, so it is a little bit more ideal for shadows that are a little bit firmer in the pan or more metallic. And you can see I did get a little bit of fallout there with the brush. I think that's from the powder kickback that I had here. Just brushing that away. Now I'm taking the rougher 15 with no additional shadow. I'm just going to kind of blend these two shades together a bit in the crease. And I think I'm actually going to go in with the 15 in this more like magenta shade. This one you can see is coming up just fine. I mean, it's still a creamier product, but just going to add a little bit of this to the crease, make that a little bit brighter. I wiped off this brush and I am just going to kind of blend this area where they're all meeting. So I'm doing little circles, kind of buffing that in a bit. I actually didn't plan on using all of these colors at once, but I think might as well. Let's try this green shade here. This is the pencil one from Sonia G. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this. You can see how much comes up in the inner corner just for a little brightness here. Okay, so that is not as bright as I thought. Let me get a little bit more here. I thought that would be like a bright, shocking green. Maybe I have to use my finger with this shade, but well, let's try it. I have to say it's still pretty light on the finger too. Just placing a little bit there, and then I'm going to use the brush to kind of move it a little. I'm going to use my finger in this gold shade here. Oh, this is soft. It feels very soft and velvety. And I'm just going to add a touch to the center here, and I'm going to blend that out. So I'm taking the rougher 15 and I'm just softly blurring those edges there because I want it to be just a little bit more diffuse. So this is the eye look up close. I'm going to add some liner and mascara and finish my makeup, and I will show you a distance shot. So this is the final eye look from a distance. And on the upper lash line, I added the Linda Hallberg crayon in Spar Flash, which is this one here at the bottom. Show you that. So this is sparkly. And then on the lower lash line, I added this Linda Hallberg crayon in Calf Flash, which is a slightly cooler tone brown with a plum base to it. So there's a little bit of purple in there. And this is it. Let me know what you think. It's now the end of the day, and I just wanted to show you, I was just kind of playing around. So I took my finger into this gold shade, which is called Victory, and I just tapped it over the eyeshadow, which by the way has not creased. It's been 10 hours. And let me show you up close what it looks like, because I think this, you know, it just gives it more of a golden frosty look to it. So this is the shade Victory on top of the eye look from earlier. And you can see that you can actually build it up so that it is more opaque, but it can also lend just kind of like a golden diffusion essentially of what you have underneath. And I think it looks really nice. So I used my finger and tapped it on, and you can see that I concentrated it closer to the lash line, and it's more gradual moving all the way up. And just for reference, on my lips, I have the Lisa Eldridge lipstick in Velvet Muse. I'm taking the Sonia G Smudger one, and I'm going to go into the blue shade, which is called Odyssey. And you can see that this is a thick smudger. And I'm going to put this along the lash line. And I do have the Viseart eyeshadow primer on today. I wiped the brush off, and I'm going to go into this fuchsia shade here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of this to the outer corner here. So I'm blending it with the blue on the lash line there, and just going up to the crease area here, dragging whatever's left kind of into the crease. I wiped off this brush, and I'm using it with the, you know, wider edge going vertical, and just kind of blending what I dragged into the crease. For the rest of the lid, I'm going to go into the gold shade with my finger. And I'm going over the blue too, but I'm trying to be a little bit lighter in touch there so I can still see it. Same thing with the fuchsia. Taking the Rephr 16 brush and no shadow on here. And I'm just gonna buff this crease area a little. And I'm gonna get a little bit of the gold shade on the Rephr 16 and just kind of go over that crease a little bit more. But I'm trying to make it more diffused. Taking the Smudger 2 again into the light pink, and this is going to be the inner corner, and just going to dab a touch of it in here. And for the upper lash line, I'm going to smudge the Blitz Blue from Pat McGrath into the eyes. You can see it's a blue sparkly one. So just going to smudge this into the lash line a little. And just going to put a tiny bit on the outer corner here and take the Smudger 2 and blend that in. Just make sure that's clean. And this is my final eye look here, and I will show you a distance shot when I finish my makeup. And this is the final eye look from a distance. Okay, we're gonna play with a few more colors today. We are gonna go with the green, and I'm gonna use my finger and put this on the inner half of the eye here. This green definitely applies much better with a finger than it does with a brush. So just gonna stop there for now, but I might add more later. Next, we're gonna go in with the light pink, and I'm gonna put that right next to it. And we're just gonna kind of feather that in a little bit. We're not gonna put much of this on right now because I'm gonna use it as a topper. And then we're going into the fuchsia shade. And I'm gonna start at the outer corner and work my way in with this. So I'm gonna put the light pink here again. I just kind of wanted to see how opaque it was on its own. You can see I'm getting a little bit of fallout from this shade, even using a finger. And I'm being very gentle, so there is a tiny bit of fallout. That's a really pretty shade. All right, next I'm taking the Rephr 16, and there's no shadow. And I'm just gonna kind of buff this area a little bit. Now this brush is very, very, fluffy, and it's not going to move product a lot. These products are, they kind of stay where they are. So if you were trying to, kind of buff it out more, you'd want something a little bit firmer and denser. I just want to get a tiny bit, so this will work. Okay, and next I'm going back into the light pink here, and I'm just gonna kind of dab this right where those colors meet and just feather it a little bit on both sides. You can see that that really blurs the colors really well. And you could even just use this as a topper. Here, let's just show you. Don't really want to smudge up the green, but there we go. You can see that when you use this shade as a topper, it really, you can see a lot more of the light pink. It's not as transparent as it looks on my lids. Just gonna mix a little bit more of the fuchsia in because I covered it a little bit more than I wanted to. So I'm just gonna mix a little bit more at the outer corner and feather that in. I'm just taking a powder brush and brushing away the fallout there. And you can see with my fingers, I got a little bit, downward. So I'm just taking my microfiber cloth and just wiping that a little bit. And I'm not too worried about the color that's remaining there. I'll touch that up with some concealer. For the upper lash line, I'm taking the Chanel Le Stylo in 83 Cassis, and I'm just going to smudge this along the upper lash line here. I'm taking the Rephr 03, I'm going to go into the green, and then I'm going to go into the fuchsia for the lower lash line. Okay, wipe the brush off, and I'm just going to kind of blend the transition here. Then I'm taking the Chantecaille Brightening Eye Kaujal in Nude, and I'm going to run this along the waterline. This helps neutralize any redness that the pink may accentuate. And this is the final eye look up close. And let me show you from a distance. Here is the final eye look from a distance. I hope that was helpful so you could kind of see, my learning process with this particular palette. I wanted to kind of go in without any expectations with this palette. And because both the Corporate and the Sciomancer kind of both behave a little bit differently for me, I wasn't really sure what to expect with Syren. I was really hoping its formula would be very similar to this one here in Sciomancer. So let's talk about Syren's formula itself. Now, as I mentioned, this gold shade here is going to be a bit softer, velvety. It's really easy to apply. I love this texture. I love this shade. You can apply this lightly to get more of like an overall wash and kind of dilute some of the other shades, or you can pile it on and make it more of an intense gold. It's a gorgeous shade. And if you put it on top of another shade, it has some sheerness to it, but it is kind of like a medium level opacity. So you're still going to get gold there, but you'll be able to see some of the other shadow peeking through underneath. So it works well to dilute, but yet not completely hide whatever you're covering. This fuchsia shade here, I think this works really well formula wise. I think the fuchsia and the blue Odyssey, these two both perform very similarly. They're fairly pigmented. You can apply either of these with a brush for a softer look, but they do, again, apply best with a finger. And I think, again, they're really easy to work with. You can have very vibrant shades or very soft shades, depending on how you brush them out. They also blend out very well. Now, since these are a creamier product, you're not going to have as fast of a blend with this formula in general as you would with a powder product. Powder products, when you start to blend out, for example, the crease and so forth, those powder particles will move very easily, and they kind of, like they're easy to move. It'll be a fast blend. But this is a little bit creamier, so it's going to adhere more strongly to your skin, and it's going to take a little bit more work. So if you are using an eye brush with these, I would recommend using something with undyed goat hair or a synthetic brush, and you want something that's a little bit firmer, something perhaps a little bit more dense. So personally, I really like using something that's more of a cylindrical shape and something that's a little dense. Let me show you something. So this is just an example, but this is the Sonuji Pencil 2, and you can see how it's got this dome shape here, and it's a little bit firmer, so there's not as much flex with the bristles, which really works to disperse this product well. Now, the green and the light pink, I have to say, are different than I expected. You can build them up to get something as deep as the swatch, but in general, you really have to kind of pile that product on to get it that vibrant, in my opinion. So again, I mentioned that you really need to work in a larger area to really see those well, or you can use something like a foam tip applicator to get something in a more precise spot. But these are lighter shades, and they are a little bit harder to build up than the fuchsia and the blue. Part of it is, they're light in general, but the actual formula of these, like this pink one, you can almost use this as a topper And I showed you that in the third look. When you put it on top, it's kind of like an opaque topper. But if you use a brush to apply this, you really only see the pink sparkle from it. So there's actually, you know, when you build this up, you don't see quite so much of it, but you're gonna see like pink sparkle as more of a light topper effect if you use a brush. And if you use a brush with the green, you're not really seeing too much color. So those two, I would definitely recommend using finger or foam tip applicator. Now, compared to the other BYREDO palettes, it is most similar in formula to the Sciomancer palette. And I have to say, this is still my favorite palette. I don't like this glittery shade. This is kind of like a glitter, and you probably want to use like a glitter glue or some sort of adhesive to keep this in place, because it will, you know, it's kind of sheer, and you can see, you know, you really just kind of want to adhere that or it'll be all over. So I don't like this shade. I don't use it. It's not something for me. But these other four I love. And I have to say, formula wise, they are similar to Syren in the fact that they are kind of like this creamy texture. I mean, look at that. But they actually are a little bit creamier than Syren and a little bit easier to work with. These are a little bit more pigmented in general and a little bit creamier, so that you can actually use these more easily with a brush. So these can be applied with a brush or with a finger. Again, it will be more pigmented with a finger, but you can get a very nice, still pigmented look with a brush with these as well. And in general, I find these to be a little bit softer than the four in Syren. The gold one I'm excluding. The gold one is different completely. So here's a swatch of these four shades. I'm not going to swatch the glitter because it's really hard to swatch. It doesn't really come up easily. It's really more like a diffused sparkle. So this is Sciomancer, and you can see just looking at these that the formulas of these have kind of this same like sheen, this more vibrant sheen that you have in the fuchsia and the blue here, but it's more intense in the Sciomancer, except for the green. And I have to say, when using the green does perform more similar to these. It's a little bit drier. I'm not saying it's dry, these are all creamy, but it's a little bit drier like these two are. So these three here are definitely the creamiest out of all of the shadows from BYREDO that I have tried, which I guess are all of them. So here is the Corporate palette, which I have to say I thought was going to be my favorite palette color-wise, but the Sciomancer actually wins. Now, texturally, these are going to be a drier formula. These are more like a traditional eyeshadow palette, more like a powder. They're not so creamy. And you can see how nicely these go on. This second shade here is called Eraser, and that formula is very similar to Victory in Syren. So it's soft, it's smooth, it's highly metallic, and it applies really well. These are the last two. And again, these will apply best with your fingers, but these will go on really well with a brush as well. They are more similar to a traditional formula. They're a little bit more powdery, but yet they still have a creamy texture to them. However, not as much as you would feel in Syren or Sciomancer. So overall, you know, this one here in the middle, this middle shade here is called Pushpin. That one is the driest formula, I think, of all of the eyeshadows. And you can see that it's a matte, whereas pretty much everything else that you get from BYREDO has this sheen. So overall, my opinions on these palettes, I personally really like the BYREDO eyeshadow palettes. I really enjoy the formulas. I think, you know, for me, if I had to pick one, it's going to be the Sciomancer purely because of this formula. Syhowever, color-wise, I really like the color stories on all three of the palettes. I didn't think I'd really care for this one so much for Syren because, you know, I don't really wear these colors too often, but I have to say I really love the gold, the fuchsia, and the blue. So Victory, the one I can't say, and Odyssey. So I absolutely love them, and I think they are wonderful. I personally am very glad that I have all three of these palettes. I really do enjoy them a lot, but I think performance-wise, I would give it to Sciomancer, followed by Syren, and then Corporate. And there's nothing wrong with Corporate or the way it applies or anything like that. It's just that this is more ordinary and the other two are more unique from things that I've used. However, keep in mind that this one, again, it's more traditional. It goes on just fine with the brush. And the other ones, they really don't. So it kind of depends. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to use my fingers for eyeshadow or makeup. So it kind of depends what kind of person you are. But I think overall, all of the shadows are great. And I have worn all of these palettes with and without primers. And I tested Syren specifically with the NARS primer, the Viseart primer, and with no primer. And they all lasted at least 10 hours without any signs of wear. So that's one of the things that I really love about these. It's really difficult, in my opinion, to find something that has this like creamy formula that actually stays put that long without using a primer. And even in my crease and everything, it really does. So I think these formulas are fantastic, and I'm really excited to see more from this brand. You know, there have been some hits and some misses overall from BYREDO, in my opinion, but I do really love these eyeshadow palettes. I wish though that they were all a similar consistency. It's weird to me that each of the eyeshadow palettes has so many differences in formula. And I don't know if technically the formula is the same and it's just like the pigments from the colors that have caused these changes, but I can definitely notice a difference using different shades. And I think that's weird. So I do wish they were all more consistent. Personally, I wish they were all the formula that you use for like this Victory shade or for the ones in Sciomancer, these three here. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that, but they are all nice to use. Again, out of all of the palettes, the only shade I do not use is this glitter, which is really, you know, not a shade per se. It's really just glitter. So I hope this was helpful. And if you've been on the fence about these palettes, you know, please take a look at the other review I have featuring Corporate and Sciomancer. If you're interested in seeing more looks with these palettes, please let me know. I'd be happy to oblige because these are so much fun to use. And, you know, I think mixing and matching these is going to be a lot of fun. So if you are looking to purchase these, they do sell them at Selfridges with a slightly cheaper price than here in the US, but they are also available at Saks and on BYREDO.com. So I will leave all purchasing information down below, and please let me know what you think. If you are new to my channel or you haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscription button and the notification bell. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you very soon. So have a great day. Oh, and by the way, this stuff on my face, new Chanel spring collection coming tomorrow. So stay tuned. I will see you soon. Have a great day.